Okay, so picture this with me. Space travel. As normal as, like, hopping on a plane. That's what SpaceX seems to be going for with this Starship thing. And honestly, it might be a bigger deal than we realize.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're going to do a deep dive on this whole Starship program, yeah.
Okay.
And we're basing this on that new article from PC Mag.
Right. They lay it all out. It's really interesting.
They really do. All the exciting details about this wild idea.
It's more than wild. Well, I'd call it revolutionary. Like the way SpaceX is using Falcon 9's success to kind of catapult us forward. That's what's really fascinating.
Yeah, Falcon 9 was huge EE, proving that we could reuse these rockets.
Totally.
And that changed the game, made space travel way more affordable, and now there are all these possibilities.
Precisely. Reusability totally changed the economics of space travel, and it opened the door for these super ambitious projects like Starship, right? I mean, a few decades ago, it would have been unthinkable.
It's like going from horses to, like, I don't know, a bullet train or something.
Yeah.
But as good as Falcon 9 is, it's got its limits, you know?
Of course, sure.
What if we want to send people to Mars with all the stuff they'd need?
Yeah, that's where... Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's where Starship comes in.
Exactly. Falcon 9 just doesn't have the muscle for those kinds of missions, going that deep into space.
Right.
Starship is like... Think of it as their answer to needing a heavy lifter. Something to get huge payloads to the moon, Mars, and even further out, maybe.
And heavy is an understatement. Imagine this. Starship, taller than the Statue of Liberty, and it's got 6 of those methane-fueled Raptor engines. Wild.
It's incredible, the engineering, but Starship's not alone in this.
Right.
It's a 2-part system. It works with a super heavy booster.
Ah, yes. Super Heavy, Starship's partner in crime. So why 2 stages? Is that better for getting away from Earth's gravity?
Think of it this way. You need a crazy amount of power just to break free from Earth.
Makes sense.
So super heavy, that's your initial boom. It gets Starship high up, then separates and comes back down.
Oh, okay.
From there, Starship uses its own engines to keep going.
So it's all about being efficient.
Exactly. Efficiency. And, speaking of power, Super Heavy's got even more thrust than NASA's big space launch system.
No way.
Yeah, and if you stacked them together, they're 394 feet tall. Taller than the biggest pyramid.
It's the biggest rocket ever. It's mind-blowing. But getting something that huge off the ground, that can't be easy.
Oh, tell me about it. Testing Starship has been eventful, to say the least.
That's putting it lightly. There have been some seriously spectacular explosions. Or rapid unscheduled disassemblies, I think they call them.
Yeah, let's be real. When you're pushing tech this far, there are going to be bumps in the road.
Yeah.
The important thing is SpaceX learns from each test, each little, each explosion, basically, to refine the design, make it safer,
Fail fast, learn faster, as they say.
Right.
And they have made some cool progress. Just recently, they managed to separate Starship and Super Heavy during a test.
Huge step.
Huge, yeah.
And they even landed Super Heavy back on Earth, which that's key for reusability, making space travel less expensive.
That landing was beautiful.
It was.
Okay, so we've got this massive rocket, can haul tons of stuff. But the real question is, what are we going to do with it? And I think we all know the most exciting answer. Mars colonization.
Oh, yeah. Captured everyone's imagination, hasn't it?
It has.
Elon Musk talking about fleets of starships packed with explorers ready to build a Martian city. That's like straight out of science fiction.
And we know Elon Musk's science fiction is just future fact as far as he's concerned. But, okay, let's be real. Mars is the dream. But Starship's going to do other stuff first, right?
More achievable missions.
Exactly. Think of it as stepping stones. One of the first things, probably setting up the new Starlink satellites. Those are crucial for SpaceX's whole plan to get internet everywhere, even the most remote places.
Right. And just so everyone's on the same page, Starlink isn't just about faster downloads. We're talking potentially connecting like 3 billion people who don't have reliable internet.
That's right. Imagine that impact. Better education, more economic opportunity, even healthcare. All because of space tech.
It's a game changer. Although, not everyone's thrilled. Astronomers are worried about all those satellites creating light pollution, messing with their observations.
It's that classic, you're right. Space is becoming commercialized so fast. On one hand, we could connect everyone, bridge that digital divide.
Yeah.
But then you have this worry about the unintended consequences.
It's a tough balance, finding that middle ground.
Yeah.
And it's something we'll have to figure out carefully as we explore and use space more and more.
Absolutely. And it's something to keep in mind as we keep going on our deep dive into SpaceX's Starship program. But we'll save that for part 2.
We're back, and I gotta say, this Starship thing just keeps getting more amazing. We were talking about Starlink connecting everyone, but that's just one piece of the puzzle.
Totally. Starlink is just, it's the tip of the iceberg when you think about what Starship can do.
Right.
It can carry so much so far. The possibilities are, I mean, they're almost endless. Okay, now I'm even more intrigued. Give me some examples. What else could it do?
Okay, well, there's the moon. For starters, remember NASA's whole Artemis program? They want to send people back to the moon and stay there this time.
Right. Build a whole base.
Exactly. And Starship could be how they get everything there. Cargo, places for people to live, the astronauts themselves.
So, like, Starship could actually make that lunar base happen.
Absolutely. It's a game changer. And that's just the moon. We're also talking about missions to Mars to bring back samples. Starship could pick up what the rovers collect and bring it back for scientists to study.
It's like something out of Star Trek. But what about, us regular people here on Earth? Will Starship change anything for us?
That's a good question. Space tourism is the obvious one. But it could even revolutionize how we travel here. Imagine going from, say, New York to Tokyo in less than an hour.
Wait, are we talking about, like, rocket flights across the ocean?
It's something SpaceX has been looking at using Starship for super fast travel here on Earth. There's a lot to figure out still, but imagine cutting travel time that much.
That would make those long flights way more bearable. But let's get back to the big one, Mars colonization. What are the real challenges of getting people to Mars and then, like, making sure they can actually live there once they arrive?
The million-dollar question, right? Or maybe trillion-dollar, how big this whole thing is. One of the biggest hurdles is figuring out how to refuel Starship while it's in orbit.
Why is orbital refueling so important?
Imagine driving across the country, right? You wouldn't expect to make it on one tank of gas.
True.
Same idea here. We need to get massive amounts of fuel into Starship while it's orbiting Earth. And that is not easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. No space gas stations just yet.
Right. And it's not just that it's hard to do, it's also the logistics and the cost of making it happen.
Sounds like we've got a way to go before we're all packing for Mars.
Yeah, there's a lot to do. But even just having this conversation, thinking about putting people on Mars, it's incredible how far we've come.
It really is. It feels like we're on the edge of something brand new in space exploration, and Starship is leading the way. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we can't forget about the human side of things. What about the astronauts? The ones who actually have to go on these missions?
Oh, yes. The brave souls going beyond Earth. And that brings up a whole other set of challenges. How do we handle the physical and mental demands of space travel, especially when it takes so long?
Yeah, visiting space for a few days is different from traveling to Mars, right? That's a whole other level.
Huge difference. A Mars mission could take months or even years. And we're still learning about how that would affect the human body and mind.
So what are the biggest worries when it comes to astronauts' health on those long trips?
Well, there's radiation. Here on Earth, we've got the magnetic field protecting us, but space is way harsher.
Right.
Astronauts going to Mars would be exposed to a lot more radiation, which can have some nasty long-term effects on their health.
That's definitely a concern. Are they doing anything to, like, protect them from that?
Oh yeah, scientists and engineers are working on better shielding and designing spacecraft with special areas that protect against radiation, trying to minimize the risk as much as possible.
Good to know they're taking it seriously. But radiation isn't the only thing, is it?
Oh no, not even close. There's also microgravity. Basically, being in space for a long time can mess with your bone density, your muscles, even your heart.
So astronauts have to, like, work out constantly in space.
Exactly. They have a strict exercise routine to fight those effects and stay healthy.
Sounds like life in space is pretty demanding. Exciting, but demanding.
It definitely has its challenges. But it's also an amazing chance to push the limits of what we know about being human and explore new frontiers.
That's a good way to put it. And speaking of pushing limits, what about the mental aspect? Being stuck in a tiny spaceship, millions of miles from home, for months, that's gotta be tough.
You're right, the psychological side is just as important as the physical. Isolation, being confined, not having the same sensory experiences we're used to, can all take a toll.
So how do you even prepare astronauts for that?
It starts with who they recruit and how they train them. They focus on finding people who are resilient, who can handle stress well and get along with others in high-pressure situations. And then the training involves lots of simulations that try to recreate what it's really like to be on a long space mission.
So it's about mental toughness as much as physical fitness.
Absolutely. They have to be as prepared mentally as they are physically.
It makes you really appreciate the dedication it takes to go on these missions. It's not just about building a bigger rocket, it's about pushing the boundaries of what humans are capable of.
Exactly. It takes engineers, scientists, doctors, psychologists, experts from every field working together to overcome the challenges of space travel.
It's incredible, really. It shows what we can achieve when we set our minds to something. But as we get deeper into this, one question keeps coming back to me. What's waiting for us on Mars?
The ultimate question, right?
Yeah.
What will we find when we finally get there?
And will it be worth it? All the risks, all the effort.
Those are the questions we'll be diving into in our final act. Don't go anywhere.
And we're back for the final leg of our deep dive into SpaceX's Starship. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have. From those early tests to the whole idea of humans living on Mars, it's been quite a ride.
Really shows you what people can do when they put their minds to it, So much ingenuity.
Right. And speaking of pushing limits, we left off talking about the big one. What's actually waiting for us on Mars?
Yeah, is it going to be like in the old sci-fi books with underground cities and aliens?
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know about little green men just yet. But Mars itself is already pretty amazing.
So what's the deal with the red planet? Why are scientists so obsessed with it?
Imagine this. Mars is like Earth's distant cousin. Colder, but it's got polar ice cap seasons, canyons.
Yeah.
Even signs of ancient rivers and lakes.
Wow, really? So there could be, evidence of past life on Mars.
That's the dream for a lot of scientists. Finding even tiny fossils, even just microbes, would completely change how we think about life in the universe.
That would be huge. But even if there's nothing like that, just going to Mars, maybe even living there, that's got to be a massive accomplishment on its own.
Oh, absolutely. It's about going beyond what we know, expanding our knowledge, maybe even making sure humanity survives long term.
No small feat. But let's be real. Colonizing another planet, that can't be easy.
Oh, no, it'd be incredibly hard. Remember all those challenges we talked about? Getting people there safely? Now multiply that by 1,000. Building a place where people can actually live on a planet with almost no atmosphere, freezing temperatures, and not a lot of resources. That's another level.
Sounds overwhelming, honestly. Where do you even start with a project that big?
It takes a lot of different things happening at once. You need to come up with totally new ways to keep people alive, figure out how to grow food in Martian soil, even create energy with less sunlight.
Mind-blowing. But then there are the ethical questions, right? Like, who gets to go to Mars? And who gets to decide how things work there if people do end up living there?
Those are the big questions, and they're not easy to answer. The space community, and really everyone, needs to be thinking about these things. As we go further out into space, we'll have to face some tough ethical and philosophical dilemmas.
It's a lot to think about, but that's what these deep dives are all about, right? Getting us to think about the bigger picture.
Exactly. Exploring these complex ideas, getting people to think critically and ask questions.
Well said. And speaking of questions, here's one for you and for our listeners to think about. Imagine you're standing on Mars, you look up, and the sky is this reddish pink color. What goes through your mind? How do you feel? It's something to ponder.
That's a powerful image, a great note to end on. And who knows, maybe one day some of our listeners will actually experience that moment.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of SpaceX's Starship. It's been a wild ride.